it is an exciting time right now. It is also a time where questions are being raised. So it is very timely. I think God ordained to be having a conversation like this. And so certainly we want to engage upon questions that you have right now. We're going to have some kind of time to, at the start, just kind of going through a little bit of some remarks we have, some insights to give. And certainly towards the end, we'll have a Q&A time. So if you had questions, either write them down, you can put them in the chat. I'm not going to treat this totally like a webinar type thing where certainly feel free to unmute later on and we want to talk with you. I'll stay on for a while. I don't know what, some others have, but we certainly, again, just want to help serve everyone in the different questions and essentially taking advantage of the opportunity that's presented to us right now in this kind of exciting time. So just wanted to draw attention to that. So with that, I think Debbie, just want to let you take it away here.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Dan. And I just want to first just thank PFI for hosting this, and Randy, and I know Mike's not on, and Dan and your team for doing this, partnering with us, and also partnering with Align Life Ministries. As I was sharing earlier before everybody got on, there was just a revelation that this is the first time we've done anything like this, where across Pennsylvania, directors are coming together on one webinar. Like, we've done conferences where it has been part of the state here or part of the state there, but this is the first time where we're connecting. Like, I see Amy's over there. We're connecting at one end of the state, and then we have Cheryl that's in Schuylkill County at the other end of the state. So it's exciting to see that. And so I want to welcome each one of you on, and I'm glad that you're here. And again, like, we're doing this because there's resources that have been made available to us. We've partnered with Align Life Ministries as their leadership team was discerning what was ahead with the possibility of Roe versus Wade being overturned before the secret was leaked. They were already discerning some things that they could do, and their heart was to be able to offer to make that available to anybody that needed it. So we're really grateful that Lisa's the president of Align Life Ministries. She's on here with us also. Matt Kocher's on with us. He is our VP of marketing, and he'll be sharing a little bit later. The other part that I just wanted to mention is Dan had said about questions. We'll have questions towards the end. We definitely want to hear questions and thoughts and things like that. And I'm going to open up with just a time of prayer, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. So Father, I thank you for this time. I pray that as we're on, and as those that are still wanting to get on, they're able to get on, and there's no technology problems, no technical issues, no IT issues, whatever issues would be in the airwaves. We just pray your peace over the airwaves. We thank you for your peace that is with us, because you are always with us, and you're the God of peace. And we just commit this time to you. And I pray your blessing over each director, over each person that is on this webinar, that they would hear your heart, discern what they need to do for their ministry, themselves, their teams, and their boards. And that God, they would be able to implement in a timely manner what you are calling them to walk in this season. So we thank you. We pray your blessing in this time. In your name, Jesus. Amen. So at this point, I am going to turn it back over to Dan and the team, to Randy, I guess, and let you guys share what you're going to share.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. And I guess I'll quick introduce. So Randall Wenger is our senior counsel with Pennsylvania Family Institute and our Independence Law Center, and has helped both pregnancy centers and many others. I appreciate just all the work that Randy does. And then Judge Cheryl Allen on our team with our Pennsylvania Family Institute. She's out of Pittsburgh. She's on the board with a pregnancy center, and just brings a wealth of information, knowledge to address some of the issues. So there's certainly, the issue obviously with Dobbs and the Roe v. Wade decision, everything that's going on with the leak, and some of the questions surrounding that, and then some specifics, what's going on in Pennsylvania. So Randy, Judge Allen can address those both. So I guess Judge Allen, I think we were having first. So Judge Allen, feel free to address.
And you are muted.
Mute myself.
There you go.
Good morning, everyone. I am really honored to be here. I'm not on the board of a pregnancy care center, but I am affiliated with one in some way. And this is a matter that is very close to my heart. And so I'm happy to have this opportunity to share with you. With regard to the Dobbs case, Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization. I get tongue-tied when I say that because these organizations have nothing whatsoever to do with health. But at any rate, as you all know, this case was argued on December 1st, 2021. And our expectation is that the court will render its final decision probably sometime in June. But someone saw fit to leak a draft of the opinion that was apparently circulated in February of this year. And the draft of the majority opinion clearly shows that the court intends to overturn Roe v. Wade as well as the Casey decision. Now, we hear people on the left screaming, yelling, talking about how can they overturn 50 years of legal precedent. I like to remind them that Plessy versus Ferguson was legal precedent for 58 years, and it was overturned because it was wrong. You know, Plessy v. Ferguson basically legalized racism and segregation. And so the court in its wisdom saw that there's no reason to continue to perpetuate a wrong. The left does not want to hear that, however, in this case, because this case was decided on a constitutional basis. The Roe court had interjected into the Constitution something that there clearly is not, and that is a right to privacy, a right for a woman to make her own decision as it relates to these matters. There is no right of privacy in the US Constitution. There is clearly no right to an abortion. And so this decision was leaked, and I believe that it was leaked for the express purpose of pressuring the Supreme Court justices to make a decision that is agreeable to the left, something that is clearly a violation of federal law. However, it appears that the Justice Department is not going to enforce federal law. I believe that it was leaked in an effort to really hide behind or divert attention away from the failures of this administration, and hopefully energize the base because of what has been predicted about the 2022 elections, and to hopefully energize Congress or pressure Congress, in the Senate in particular, to passing the Women's Health Protection Act. And as we know, I believe it was yesterday, they made another effort to pass that act in the Senate, and it, of course, was dead on arrival. And so that's one reason we know that this year's election is so important. Even if Roe is overturned, we know that it will have no impact whatsoever in Pennsylvania, because overturning Roe simply means that the decisions with regard to abortion will be made by the state legislatures, as it should be. And we know in Pennsylvania, we have our Abortion Control Act. Nothing will change about that, unless, of course, we're fortunate enough to elect a pro-life governor. But as things stand right now, there is not going to be a change. I know that the left is saying that we're going to be inundated with abortion requests, no doubt from Ohio and West Virginia, who have much more strict abortion laws than the state of Pennsylvania does. But other than that, I really don't see or we don't see that there's going to be any change, major change in Pennsylvania. What we do see is a need for added security and increased security. Now, we also have the Allegheny Reproductive Health Center case. There's that word health again. And I always thought reproduction meant to multiply and increase, but I guess it doesn't mean that as far as these people are concerned. But anyway, this is a case involved against the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services, seeking to advocate on behalf of Black women by asserting racism and systemic discrimination as justification for publicly funded abortions, claiming that Black women are underserved when it comes to reproductive health care. And they argue that striking down the Medicaid prohibition of abortion funding will provide greater access and equality, especially for Black women. Now, needless to say, and I'm sure you're all aware that Black women are not underserved in the abortion industry. If anything, they're overserved. And while Black women or Black people comprise about 12% of the population of the state of Pennsylvania, more than 40%, actually more than close to 50% of all the abortions in this state are performed on Black women. So all they're doing, on one hand, pretending to help Black women, they're advocating for opening the door for the destruction and extermination of more Black people, which, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg said in a New York Times interview in 2009, if I may paraphrase her, she said, frankly, I always thought that Roe was about population control, particularly those populations that we don't want to have too many of. And that's been the motivation that forms the foundation of everything that Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry has done since its beginning. So yes, systemic racism does exist in the abortion industry. Because we anticipate that our very liberal Supreme Court may give us an adverse decision in the Allegheny Reproductive Health Center case, we at the Pennsylvania Family Institute are working to propose a constitutional amendment, which I'm going to turn things over to Randy to tell you more about that amendment.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Judge Allen said, the Dobbs decision in and of itself, by overturning Roe, isn't necessarily going to change anything here in our state of Pennsylvania. A lot of states, 20-some states, have either trigger laws or still have on their books laws from before Roe versus Wade. We do not here in Pennsylvania. So the Abortion Control Act will continue to control after Roe, and unfortunately nothing changes. But even more unfortunately than that, the Allegheny Reproductive Healthcare case, the abortion industry is saying under Pennsylvania's constitution, there should be a right to abortion and a right to abortion funding. So that case is right now before Pennsylvania's very liberal Supreme Court rather than the United States' conservative Supreme Court. So this liberal Supreme Court is being asked to expand abortion rights in the state of Pennsylvania. And I am pretty certain that they're going to say, sure, glad to do it. That will bring a change to things here in Pennsylvania. If they say yes, public funding for abortion, there's going to be more people seeking abortion. If they're saying the waiting periods are invalid, which they may say, that's really going to impact the kind of work that you do. And there's no telling how far they're going to go with this in terms of age, because the logic of the abortion industry is because men don't have to carry a pregnancy, women shouldn't have to carry a pregnancy. And the logic of that is the same at month 9 as it is in month 1. So we're very concerned about that. We're starting a constitutional amendment effort. And I want you all to think, big picture pro-life, because the reason that you're doing what you're doing and we're doing what we're doing is because we all want to protect the unborn. And it may be that you guys are going to have to jump over into our space a little bit more over the next year and a half, because getting a constitutional amendment passed and ratified is not easy. So what we're doing right now is trying to get the State House and the State Senate to pass the constitutional amendment before the end of June of this year. If they can do that, we can then get another vote early next year in the House and in the Senate. Once they voted on it twice in 2 different sessions, because there's going to be an intervening election, then it can go to a referendum vote of the people, probably in the fall of 2023. And to that end, we're going to be working to build the grassroots in this state like you have never seen before. And it's going to be a big campaign where we're all going to have to work together to point our supporters to the need to get this referendum over the top, because without the referendum, there's then no ability for the state legislature to protect life. So we've been waiting for 50 years for Roe versus Wade to be overturned, and we may have it for moments until the Pennsylvania Supreme Court acts and then makes the same mistake that the Roe court made, constitutionalizing the issue of abortion, but this time for the state of Pennsylvania. So I saw somebody in the chat asking what the timeline is for the Pennsylvania Supreme Court case. They have been slow rolling this, and I think they're trying to slow roll it so an opinion doesn't occur until after the fall election, if I were to guess at this point, because they've recently said we're going to have oral arguments in the case, but they didn't even give a date for the oral arguments. So it seems to me they're trying to push this off as long as possible, because I don't think they want what they're doing to negatively impact the Democrats' chance of winning in the elections. Where if a very liberal Supreme Court strikes down aspects of our abortion law and creates taxpayer funding of abortion, that's going to be bad for the pro-abortion party. And so I think the Supreme Court is slow rolling this so that we don't get a decision until after the election, but I could be wrong. So it's really important that we take some action and try to get this constitutional amendment in place so that we can finally make good on hopefully Roe versus Wade being overturned, and then the ability to have laws passed here in Pennsylvania that would actually protect life. So we're so close, and I would hate to be set back decades in this effort. So that's going to take us all working together. I don't know if you had intended any Q&A to be part of this time, or if we move on to the next segment.
I think, Randy, probably what I could do, I think we wanted to go to a couple other segments just to address those, and then certainly have those questions. And again, we can have as many questions as you guys would like. But I know you addressed with the timeline there, and even just to point out too, we as an organization, Pennsylvania Family Institute, I mean, for years beyond my time, with the organization, pregnancy centers are such a key component of this whole issue. And I could speak from Michael. He helped start the pregnancy center out in Pittsburgh. The Women's Choice Network, and just their desire, both he and his wife Susan. And so just the heart to serve you guys is certainly what we want to do. The questions that are arising with Roe, we have things like talking points to suggest, and some resources we can point to. So we'd be happy to email things, provide some of those resources, and talk about those things in the Q&A here. So just wanted to point that out. But I think from here, probably to transition, Matt with Align Life Ministries was going to address a little bit more of just responding as a pregnancy center to some of these issues that are going to be arising.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And thanks, Randy and Judge Allen, for what you shared there. I know it's a lot of information to take in. obviously we're seeing there's a lot of misinformation being put out there. There's a lot of misunderstanding. Of course, some ill intent from the opposing side as well. But it's interesting, about maybe 6 or 7 months ago, I felt like the Lord said to me, change the narrative. Just kind of dropped that into my mind, and I'm like, what does that mean? God, what do you mean by that? And now here we sit with this kind of, this opportunity upon us and before us. So we really want to, be strategic about what we're communicating, how we're communicating. And I really feel like the Lord is giving us this opportunity to change a lot of the narrative around abortion, around life. So I'm just going to take the next 5 minutes. I'm going to blow through this pretty quickly. I'm really caffeinated today. So I just want to put together, or, share with you a few things that we're doing at Align, some basic communication tactics and things that you should be thinking about for your pregnancy center. And then if we want to talk anything more, don't hesitate to reach out to me after the fact via email or something. I'm happy to help however I can as well. So first and foremost, one of the most important things that I think you can do, and this should even just be common practice with your communication strategy and your communication calendar, is to do a quick audit of your communication channels. What I mean by that is taking a look at, every touch point of your communication. Digital could be your website, your email, your social media, all those things. Your print, how are you communicating via print? How are you communicating, any one of those touch points? What are those touch points, and who are the audiences that you're communicating to through each one of those? It's just good practice to keep kind of tabs on that, update it as you go, kind of think through that and be intentional about that. It's also important, obviously, we realize that what's happening right now and in the months to come, things can change day to day. So what we're communicating, what we're sharing right now, it could look totally different a day from now or a week from now. So really being prepared with messaging, but also being, kind of that mix of proactive and reactive. It's just kind of where we need to be right now from a communication strategy standpoint, and how we're sharing and what we're sharing. So with that in mind, one of the first things you're going to want to do is determine, the different audiences that need to hear from you as a center director, or, as somebody in the PRC world. Who are those audiences that we need to communicate with, and what are the best ways to communicate with each one of them? Obviously, one being our supporters, our financial supporters, our volunteers, things like that. Most of you, if maybe not all of you, have likely already put something out, whether it be a statement on an email, social media, something like that, addressing the leak. However you felt led to do that to your supporters was great. Obviously, as we become more educated, thanks to our friends at PFI, and we learn more about this, it's going to be incredibly important to keep in constant contact with our supporters, our understanding what's happening, how we're responding, how we're preparing to respond as a PRC, things that we might be facing, determining specific calls to actions, because a lot of supporters are asking, what can we do? How can we get involved? How can we help? So determining, what those calls to action might be, even, hey, prayer coverage. If you want to give above and beyond, consider giving more. Sign up for our email list. Follow us on social for up-to-date, information, things like that. Determine how to best communicate with them. Again, given the timeliness of a lot of the things that are happening right now, we're doing a lot through our website, blog, our emails to our supporters, our social media. We're not putting a whole lot in print, just because we know, print tends to be a longer timeline by the time something gets printed and distributed, if you mail a direct mail piece. So we're not really recommending, at least at Align, we're not planning to do a whole lot in print unless there's a very specific instance. We have a fundraising event coming up in a week or so. So we're actually going to be printing off some flyers that we're handing out to everybody at the event with just a real brief bullet point. What happens if Roe v. Wade gets overturned? And, here's kind of what we want them to know, and how we want them to know that Align is preparing and responding to it. Another audience to think about is church leaders and pastors. We've actually heard several pastors, while we've been invited to speak at churches over the last few months, we've heard some pastors specifically tell their congregants, be praying if the Lord might lead your family to consider adoption, because once Roe v. Wade falls and abortion becomes illegal, there's going to be a lot more adoption opportunity. And of course, it pains us to hear that, because it's like, well, no, that's not true. Like, that's not what's going to happen if Roe v. Wade falls. So even thinking about church leaders and their congregations, what do they know? What do they need to know? Do they understand the situation? Even taking it as far as offering potential resources to them to share with their congregation, maybe pre-producing a digital version of a bulletin insert, and they might want to share that with their congregation, something like that. Again, kind of that educating and equipping our church network is a huge thing. Thinking about our clients, we know that our clients are going to have a lot of confusion, probably a lot of fear, even more so than maybe before. So what is it that we need to say to them, and how do we communicate that with them? We're investing a lot in social media for our clients. I would imagine quite a few of us do, Google AdWords and the Google Grant, which is an incredible tool. But that's more a kind of reactionary when somebody finds themselves in need, they find us on Google, which is great. By investing in maybe some paid social campaigns toward clients, it's kind of being that proactive public relations. It starts to put our name in front of them before there's a need. It starts to earn that trust and that authority that our pregnancy centers carry in the minds of our clients, even before they might have a need for us. So if you have the means to maybe invest in some paid social campaigns focusing on clients, and it doesn't even need to be anything about the life issue or about ultrasounds or pregnancy tests or anything. It could be about parenting classes. It could be about STI testing, anything like that. But just really starting to proactively earn that trust from clients during a time when there's going to be an increased fear, increased confusion. Of course, writing blogs specifically to clients, things like that. Just think about what your clients need to hear. What questions are you hearing? What are their concerns? And how do you best communicate to them in a way that they're going to understand and trust what you're saying to them? Some other audiences might include your local representatives and lawmakers. We suggest, if at all possible, trying to set a meeting with them to educate them further on, what your pregnancy center does, the positive impact that you're having in your community, the families in your community. If they're open to it, invite them in for a tour and let them see, your facility and what you do and how you serve clients there. It's never a bad thing to have a legislator fully understand the work that we do, regardless of where they fall on the spectrum of pro-choice or pro-life. Community agency and referral partners, they may not fully understand what a ruling that could strike down portions of the abortion laws could mean for pregnancy care centers. So just being in good, frequent contact with them and making sure they fully understand that we're still here, we're still serving, here's maybe some ways that we're changing the way we serve our clients due to increased need. Again, educating them and making sure that they fully understand that we are here, we're not going anywhere. If anything, there's an increased need and we're prepared to step up and meet that and serve those in need. Of course, it sounds like several of us have already encountered the pro-abortion pundits. So really just kind of wrapping your head around what a response is going to look like when you do come into contact with them, whether it be through, bogus reviews on Google or social media, or actual in person, maybe demonstrating outside your location or something like that. How do you plan to respond to that? How do you plan to engage with them? Of course, it's always good practice to respond to, a negative review online. Do so graciously. Stick to your tone. Don't get, more aggressive with them than you have ever been. So really just thinking through, if this does happen, if we do come up against this, how are we prepared to respond? And then, of course, last but not least, the media. I don't know if anybody's been contacted by media yet, or if you've proactively reached out to local reporters, local media of any kind. But of course, we would anticipate that as this goes on, we'll likely be contacted more and more by local reporters, local media, asking questions, looking for clarity on certain things, or just trying to get us to be a part of a story that they're working on. So a few points to keep in mind there. I strongly suggest having 1 or maybe 2 point people who are going to be well-versed in your messaging and your tone, and have that one person or 2 people be the only people to engage with the media. You don't want an off-the-cuff comment that the media can spin in any way. At Align, we are drafting basically kind of a company line statement about the current situation, which right now, of course, is the SCOTUS leak. But basically, our approach to it is not to get too involved in the politics. We are addressing it and saying, obviously, as a pro-life organization, we support any decision to honor and protect preborn life. But then we turn the focus back on Align Life Ministries and what we're doing to serve the families in our community. We don't work within politics. That's what our friends at PFI are there for. So, any questions that a reporter might ask of us, again, we want to focus back on how we're loving on and serving families and clients in need in our communities. So even having a few bullet points, speaking points of, in the last 12 months, we served 600 clients. We had so many moms and dads complete our parenting classes last year. 99% of clients surveyed in the last 3 years would recommend our services to a friend or family member. If you can kind of have those predetermined speaking points, talking points, if you do have a conversation with a reporter, that gives you something to work from. Obviously, they're well thought out. They fit within your tone and your messaging. And then you're not likely to be put in a position where they're really badgering you to answer something that you're not prepared to answer. So, again, my suggestion is, focus a lot of your conversation, your engagement with the media on the impact that your PRC is having. Don't get too bogged down into the weeds of what's happening with the SCOTUS ruling or, abortion law in general. Honestly, if we start getting asked a lot of those questions, I'm going to refer them to PFI or a national affiliate like NIFLA or somebody like that who's better prepared to answer some of those questions. So really just stick to what you know best, what we know best. And then finally, the last thing I want to cover here is the importance of public relations work right now. It's not incredibly hard to do, but it's incredibly important, especially in these days. So again, I already talked about considering some paid social media, maybe focusing toward our clients, again, earning that trust, letting them know before there's a need that we're here to serve them, so that if and when they do have a need, rather than thinking the first name that comes to mind is a Planned Parenthood or another abortion clinic they might be familiar with, they already know our name. So they're more likely to get in touch with us first. So again, if you have the means, consider some paid social media to clients. Asking current and past clients to leave reviews on your Google profiles, on your social media. Obviously, positive reviews far outweigh the negatives. So being proactive and asking for those reviews is not a bad thing. A lot of people do that. It's not uncommon for that request to be heard. So, kind of religiously asking for those reviews now will help offset any potential negative blowback that could be coming down the road. Community events. At Align, we just did basically a free yard sale event. We had an abundance of diapers and some other baby supplies. So we had an event in downtown Lancaster where we invited anybody from the community to come and a bag of free diapers and free children's clothing and such. But it was a great public relations opportunity. Of course, the event itself, people saw us out there and engaging and loving on our community. But also, we distributed press releases. So the local media saw that we were out there doing this, and there was nothing about the life issue, nothing about abortion. It was just, Align's name is doing this in our community. So think about public relations in those aspects as well. If you're doing events or if you're doing, free essentials giveaways or anything like that, let the media know about it, because they can't come back and fire at you and say, how dare you give away free diapers to a mom in need? So those are just great opportunities for good, positive public relations work. And then finally, I'd encourage you, obviously we track statistics of clients and such, make those known through your social media, through your blog, through emails. Again, if you have data that shows, 99% of our clients polled would refer us to a friend or a family member in need, or, 100% of those who, did this are now experiencing that, or, we administered X amount of STI tests over the last 12 months and things like that. Like, these are good, quantifiable pieces of data that nobody can argue against, nobody can push back against. It's really good public relations to get that out there. And of course, we're hearing a lot, one of the arguments is that PRCs convince women to have a baby and then they just kick them out the door and forget about them. So when you have stats like that show that, things like that aren't true, again, it's our opportunity to change the narrative and to educate people, whether they're our clients, whether they're our supporters, or whether they're just, anybody in the state that, sees our information in the media, that sees us on social media, anything like that. Any opportunity we have to actually speak the truth, that PRCs aren't fake clinics, that we don't just convince a woman to not get an abortion and then that we forget about her. Anything that you can think of to help share that good story and that good public relations work is definitely worth doing. But ultimately, the most important thing that I can say is just stay true to your tone, to your messaging. Don't change who you are and how you communicate because of what we're facing right now or what's being said to us or about us. I'm reminded of the story of David, when he, was in camp before he fought Goliath, when he finally convinced King Saul to let him go fight. And of course, Saul wanted to put his armor on him and give him his sword and his helmet and his breastplate and everything. And, of course, David took it all off. And he said, this isn't how I fight. This isn't how I've equipped myself to fight. This isn't how the Lord prepared me to fight. I have a sling, I'll get some stones, and that's how I'm going to go, defeat the giant. So I've really taken that to heart, that we're not going to change who we are. We're not going to change what we say and how we say it, just because it feels like the heat has been turned up a little bit toward us. We still, more than anything, want our clients to know how loved they are by Jesus, and the fullness of his grace and his goodness and his hope toward them. So we just keep that in mind with everything that we communicate, regardless of who we're communicating to. So I think that's something that we just all need to keep in mind at the forefront of our minds as we think about our communication strategies moving forward. So that's everything that I had. Like I said, I just blew right through it. So we can talk more. Like I said, if you have questions, we can talk at the end. But at this point, I think we're going to move into Debbie potentially talking a little bit more about what PRC should be doing right now to prepare, and anything that we need to consider specifically as far as how we serve our clients.
So yeah, one of the things, thanks, Matt, for sharing. One of the things we've been looking at is how do we communicate to our staff, to our volunteers? And like, what kind of a posture right now when the world is getting angry around us do we take, and how do we present that to our staff? And so what we do at this point, what we're doing at Align at this point is that we are taking the posture, as Matt said, of what we always have. God is in control. This did not get God by surprise. We want to present coming with that place of confidence in him and moving and ministering from that position. One of the scriptures that the Lord had given me when I was getting ready to talk with our client service staff last week was Psalm 37. And so that just would have been a couple days after the release. And I'm going to read verses 3-7, because this is the nutshell of where we live as Christians and as pro-life ministries. Trust, lean, rely on, and be confident in the Lord, and do good. So shall you dwell in the land and feed surely on his faithfulness. And truly you shall be fed. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he will give you the desires and the secret petitions of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, roll and repose each care of your load on him. Trust, lean, rely on, and be confident also in him, and he will bring it to pass. And he will make your uprightness and right standing with God go forth as the light, and your justice and right as the shining of sun in the noonday. Be still and rest in the Lord. Wait for him and patiently lean yourself upon him. Fret not because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked devices to pass. And like, we know the anger that's out there, but you know what? We know that the peace of God is greater than that anger. And so from that position, we're able to provide a safe atmosphere, first spiritually for our staff, and then our staff to provide that for their volunteers. We're able to present policies and procedures that we all have in place, but maybe we don't review them as often as we have needed to. And so we pull the ones out that are essential for right now. And some of them would be employee response to protesters, bomb threats. How do we respond to that? Civil disobedience and facility security measures. These would be areas right now that you want to be looking at. You want to make sure your policies are up to date. Are you doing it? If you're not doing it, is it something necessary that you need to be doing right now? Do you need to update into some areas and bring that in to your policy? So you look at that, you know, however you work out your policies, if you need to have things approved with your board, you want to be able to go ahead and do that. But what that does is provide a safety net, and it sets a tone for your team. They know that the ministry is doing all that they can do to provide a safe environment so they can continue to minister to clients. And that's important. One other thing you can do is NIFLA had just put out a webinar, and if you missed it, I'm not sure if you can go back and see it if you hadn't signed up, but you can check. But their legal tips had some good points, and they had a checklist for safety and security in times of turmoil. They had a media resource information sheet. There was a bunch of different sheets that they had that I'm sure you would be able to get a hold of. The resources that are out there, take advantage of them right now. I love the fact that God will equip certain people to put them together and then make them available. We don't have to all be doing and reproducing the same thing. That's why we're a team. That's why we stand together in Pennsylvania for life and for offering life eternal, which is key for everything. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Dan and Randy and Cheryl. And oh, no, I'm not. I am so sorry. I am going to turn it over to Sarah. And Sarah is actually the executive director of, now let me get it, Promise Life Network. And she is also on our leadership team with the PLE. And I also want to mention Joan Boydell and Cheryl Cresswell are on our leadership team. So Sarah's going to take it from here, and she's going to be sharing how to effectively prepare for client increase flow.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, so I'm very excited to be here and talk with all of you. Hopefully you all got the e-blast that we sent out right after the leak happened. And in that e-blast, we had a section that you could copy and paste for your donors. We are hoping to continue doing things like that. So one of our goals is to be aware of when things are happening politically in our state as these things are changing. And we want to make sure we're working with PFI on wording and things that you have stuff that you can send out to your donors. And that helps you look really good to them because you're on top of things and you're ready and you have this information for them. But also we realize that it's a lot to put that together. And so we're working to get that out to you when things happen. And if there are specific things you would like to see, you can let Debbie know, and then we can work with PFI on developing talking points for that so that you have that at your fingertips. Also on our website, we have our new PLE website, which is linked to from the e-blast. We have our state impact report. So like Matt was talking about, going to your representatives and telling them what you do, talking about what you do is huge, but it's also helpful to rely on those state numbers as well, because we're a unified group, right? Like it's not just me and it's not just you, it's all of us doing this together. And so I want to be able to go in and talk about what Promise of Life Network does, but I don't want to forget to mention what pregnancy centers are doing all across the state. And the state impact report has some great numbers for that. So the question that's probably at the back of your minds, or even the front of your minds, what do we do? Like, what are we supposed to do? So you're giving us all this information, you're talking about communications, and we're talking about security, and we're talking about all these things, but what's going to happen with our clients? Because that's who we're here for, right? That's why we exist. We could be seeing increased numbers of clients, especially with this case that's happening in Pennsylvania right now. If our Abortion Control Act is changed to allow for Medicaid funding of abortion, if our Abortion Control Act is changed to allow for Medicaid funding of abortion and more gestational ages of abortion, we're going to see more clients, and we need to be ready for them. So the biggest part of this is as Matt said, stay in communication with your donors. Make sure they know that there's a chance that you're going to see more clients, especially those of us that are near state borders, that border states with more restrictive abortion laws. So I'm sitting right now in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. We're 20 minutes from Youngstown. Okay, that's a large low-income population who, if Roe is reversed, is no longer going to have access to abortion services. And so they could end up coming over to Pennsylvania seeking those abortion services. We want to be ready to serve them if they come here. We want to make sure that we're here to help them if they need us. So we are talking to our board and talking to our donors about potentially needing additional staffing, more nurses, maybe more advocates, that we may need to consider opening for more hours or being available more frequently. If you don't have an after hours text line or online appointment scheduler, those can be great things to add as well, so that clients can schedule services even when you're not open, to make sure that they can connect with someone even when you're not open. You also may need to increase your client intake space. So one of our challenges in the office that I'm in right now is we only have one room for clients. Our other 2 rooms are dedicated to parenting. And so we're talking about, how do we make one room sort of dual purpose and kind of tone down the baby-centric feel of the parenting office and make it more neutral so we can use it for an abortion-minded client if we need to. We're also talking about getting rid of my office and me moving over and working in shared space so we have more client space. I mean, it might be time to get creative. Maybe I'll come work in your office. Get rid of me, come work for someone else. Just kidding, I'm not leaving. We also may want to consider how do we look when someone first walks into the door? Are they sort of being smacked in the face with a box of diapers? Not literally, please do not hit people in the face, but is the first thing they see a lot of baby items? If they're already on edge thinking about abortion laws changing, they're already considering abortion, they're already tense. We don't want to push them over the edge if they walk in and the first thing they see is a lot of baby items. You might consider shifting some of your baby items to a different area. You might consider displaying them differently. I don't think that getting rid of our baby boutiques is a great solution because they're going to need us, right? If these women who may choose abortion are now feeling like they can't, now it may still be legal in Pennsylvania, but maybe all of this chatter in the news is making them rethink their abortion decision. We really hope so, right? If the Supreme Court of our nation says that perhaps abortion shouldn't be legal nationwide, hopefully that gives women some pause to think maybe this isn't something I should consider. So they are going to need those assistance items. And of course, we hope and pray, and we're going to work towards our state being abortion free. And then there will be more babies born, and those babies will need help and support, just like the ones that we're working with now. And they may even need it for longer than what we're currently doing. The other thing we have to realize is that while this is very exciting for us and we're thrilled that Roe could potentially be overturned, our clients could be very angry. So we as a society, not us in this call, but we as a society have sort of trained women to think that they need abortion. Right? You can't be successful without abortion. You can't excel without abortion. You can't live your life the way you want to without abortion. Unfortunately, this is the message that many of our young women have heard their entire lives. And so they may come in and talk to us and be very angry about what's going on in the nation. And we as advocates, when our staff need to be very sensitive to that. We may not agree with them. We don't believe that. We know they don't need abortion, right? We know they can have this baby. We know they can make good choices, but we also have to understand where they're coming from and that they might be in a very angry or upset place when they come to see us. Even if they're not personally losing their abortion rights, right? Even if they're in Pennsylvania and they can still access abortion, they may still be having those emotions because of what they're seeing in the news. The other thing that we really need to understand is that everyone is talking about this, right? Like people who never talked about abortion before are talking about it. This is an extremely hot button issue. And our clients are going to come in with a lot of preconceived ideas. And they're going to come in with a lot of sort of assumptions, okay? And our job is not necessarily to undo all of those assumptions when they come in the door. We're there to talk about their pregnancy, about their situation, and help them make a good choice for them. We don't want our client advocates to get derailed getting into a pro-life, pro-choice debate with a client. That's not helpful, and it's really not going to benefit that client, I would say probably ever, but definitely most of the time. And so we want to make sure that our advocates are ready for those kinds of statements and that they have things they can say to kind of like diffuse them or redirect the conversation back to the situation at hand. Matt already talked about online targeting and advertising to women. If you haven't had a conversation with your board lately about increasing your dollars spent on marketing or finding a way to get more dollars to spend on marketing, this may be the time to have that discussion. Again, everyone's talking about abortion. So is this the time to specifically fundraise for marketing? Is this the time to specifically reach out to your donors and say, hey, here are some needs that we're anticipating. Can you help? The other thing to really consider is that the abortion laws, if they change, and they will, if not as much as we think they will, we need to change potentially how we do scanning. And so we may end up, a lot of us don't scan in the 3rd trimester on purpose, right? I mean, we always have that client that thinks she's 8 weeks and she's actually 36 weeks. We had that happen. You probably have had that happen. Those are always great, right? So yeah, we accidentally do it, but on purpose, no, we're like, no, you're too far along for an abortion. You need an OB, we don't have to do your scan. We want you to get in with a doctor. Well, if our Abortion Control Act disappears or is changed, we could end up with women who are 36, 37, 38 weeks and considering abortion. And maybe we do need to scan them, even if they've already had an ultrasound, even if they're already seeing an OB. And so that's a discussion that we need to have with our boards and with our medical directors. Should we have some sort of trigger policy, like we have these trigger laws, right? Where if abortion becomes legal in Pennsylvania, up to a certain gestation, then we automatically begin to scan up to a certain gestation. The other side of the spectrum is doing those early scans. So a lot of women are going to be seeking to use the abortion pill. They don't want to wait till they're 7 or 8 weeks to do a scan. They want to know what's going on right now. And maybe they're only 5 weeks or 6 weeks along. I know some pregnancy centers don't do scans that early. And that would be another discussion that you need to have with your medical director and your board of directors to see if you can change that policy. We have young women who are coming in at 5 weeks wanting an abortion pill, and we can't tell them to wait 2 weeks for a scan. They need to be seen right away. We need to do that scan right away. So that would be something to discuss. Another thing is to make sure that your staff are educated on what the abortion pill is, how it works, and how it's being obtained illegally in our country. So we're mostly familiar with the 2-step process, right? Take the pill, wait 24 hours, take the second pill. We know that the reversal can happen in between those 2 pills. That's huge. We need to make sure that our staff are really well versed in that. But we also need to understand that some women are getting the abortion pill online. And they're not going to a clinic, and it may not be 2 pills. It may just be the second pill, or they may be taking the 2 pills at the same time. They may not be getting follow-up. The abortion pill landscape is changing very, very rapidly. And even if Pennsylvania continues to have legal abortion, we're going to see women who are seeking illegal pills because they find it to be cheaper or they find it to be more accessible. And those of us, and I'm included in this, in more rural communities are going to see it first. So we may very well, we're not going to be able to sort of sit back comfortably and let all the urban pregnancy centers figure it out first. We're going to be the ones on the front lines there. And I do have a website I can recommend to you for that. You can check it out. It's called athomeabortionfacts.com. That's something that we've developed, and it really does address the illegal abortion or the abortion that you get through the mail. So the other things to stay aware of, and I know that Matt mentioned this when he was talking about the online work. A lot of us had our Google My Business status changed. Did that happen to anyone else? We all of a sudden went from a pregnancy care center to a religious organization. And that happened to pregnancy centers nationwide. I would guess it was Google that did that and not individuals, because it seemed like it happened very quickly. So if you have not been checking your Google My Business, please do. That may have happened to you. And you want to make sure that you switch your status back to pregnancy care center or medical facility. Or whatever. Okay, so Jill's saying they reversed it. We had to fix ours, but maybe we found it before they got to it. So definitely keep an eye on those things, because they can come up and they can be very annoying. Let's just put it that way. Not really devastating, but annoying. And then please keep your supporters informed. Do tours, have people come through your pregnancy center, send e-blasts, be on the phone with your major donors. People are asking questions and you want to set yourself up as the expert. And again, PLE is here for you to provide talking points, verbiage, and other things through partnership with PFI. So that is all I have. So I'm going to turn it back over to Debbie and the PFI team. And of course, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and Sarah, Debbie, Matt. It's just, if there's one thing I could certainly point to is just the encouragement to all of you. You're on the front lines, and what an incredible opportunity we have here. Yes, there's many of these issues that we're trying to work out and try to help you, but boy, what an incredible time in our nation to be addressing this. And know that you are that expert in your community. You are serving women so well, and you are able to have such a powerful voice. And as Sarah was saying, everybody's really has this on their mind. We at Family Institute, I've been inundated with news requests. Oftentimes we're trying to seek those out. They're all, contacting. everyone's covering this, everyone's talking about this. And so yes, different opinions are there, but man, what an opportunity with your supporters, with your clients, with so many that are coming in on this issue. So I just want to open it up to questions to any of us on these different issues. I think I'm going to keep the recording on because obviously you may have questions that other directors have. I could certainly later on turn it off if anyone had an issue with that. But again, we just want to serve you in answering any and all type of questions. So feel free to unmute and we can continue the conversation.
Dan, I'm going to
David?
jump in and just mention before anybody starts asking questions, and that would be that the things that Matt had talked about, the things that Sarah had talked about, and any literature or anything like that that you've provided, we will be using, putting links on the PLE website so that you'll be able to directly access that. So like any templates that Align would have, or what we had sent out with the PLE and the e-blast, 2 e-blasts ago, will be available to people. So they could just click on that link. So you'll be able to go, give us a few days to get everything on there, but you'll be able to go, and as new things come on, watch, we'll be having them up there and make them available.
Debbie, I just wanted to jump in and say that any templates that other PRCs come up with, if they could submit it to you, if you could make it available statewide, and we can all be learning from, the shared expertise that's around the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. The other thing to realize too is we are planning to password protect part of our website to have these items. So if you're thinking, no, I don't want to put it on a website where it's available publicly, we are planning to add a password to that so that it's not something that's just sort of floating around out there on the web. Obviously, we wouldn't put anything like confidential out there, but as far as like talking points and those kinds of things, we're definitely going to have those protected.
Thank you, Sarah.
And one thing that I want to add, I know we're going to questions, but we want to be a resource to you. So if we can help speak to your people directly, we're happy to do that as well. For instance, Lisa had asked me to come speak at an event in June, which I am delighted to do. That one's easy because it's right in my backyard, but because we've got some people in different places in the state, we can show up in different places to try to be a help to you, to your board, to your supporters, whether it's explaining the Dobbs case, whether it's explaining what's going on with this with the state case, what things may look like for you in the future. We just want to be a resource to you all. So if there's anything that we can do to help, know that we're there for you.
And Randy, we also want to support you. You are allowing us, because you're taking care of these big picture items, you're allowing us on the front line to keep being able to serve. So if there ever is a way that the pregnancy centers collectively could sign something like the Constitution Amendment or any of those things that are just no brainers for us, please collectively, maybe we can sign some of those things and show that we are united in Pennsylvania. And, the information about how many pregnancy centers compared to the abortion clinics. There's a lot of really good data out there that I think would breed, they're going to try to say we're not going back. Well, heck no, we're not going back. Look how many pregnancy centers exist to support that did exist 50 years ago, even if I did.
Yes.
Yeah, the Pennsylvania Impact document is on the website, and that's a good one to be able to use to show the services that we have done in Pennsylvania together and how we have saved money for the residents of Pennsylvania and for taxes.
The one thing I wish that we were able to do, and I haven't figured it out, is so many of us are competing against each other for some of the Google ads. And to give Google any money kills all of us. And then when we're competing against each other is like, that's the frustrating one, but there's no workaround that I figured out. Anybody has one, I would take it.
Well, I think one thing to remember, I try not to think of it as competition. So my goal is always, if a client Googles abortion in our community and she has 3 pregnancy center ads and 1 Planned Parenthood, I want her to see all 3 of us. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want, I want her to be sort of flooded with this message that she needs an ultrasound, that she needs to get her options education, that she needs that information. And so I don't know that, I understand what you're saying. Like, it would be great if we could somehow like stay out of each other's area. But I don't know that.
I just
I
wish
don't-
Google wasn't benefiting from it. I don't
Oh,
mind us
yeah.
advertising. I just say that then they're making double the money,
Yeah, it's true. That's Google, but
but still, you're
yeah,
right.
at least they're all seeing multiple options then.
We could do a Pennsylvania co-op.
We absolutely could advertise statewide and take turns perhaps answering those questions that come in after hours and schedule for one another. That would be if we had enough buy-in, we could do that. And then we could have that notoriety of, you know, if you call this hotline in Pennsylvania, you're going to get an appointment, you know, the next day or within a couple days. So if that's something that people are interested in, definitely let Debbie know. We have a meeting coming up in June, and we'll be discussing some things that we can do to be more unified in the state.
Randy, if the Allegheny case goes through and Pennsylvania becomes far more pro-abortion, how quickly would we begin to see the impact of that?
Immediately. So one of the really problematic ways that the court can work when the court gets it wrong, unlike legislation where you see, okay, there's a whole process here and there's choke points and you can try to stop things along the way and lobby it and eventually they pass it, but it takes, you know, 9 months before a new law comes before the effective date sometimes. With a court decision, if they're saying there's a violation of the Constitution, the impact's going to be immediate. And so we need to be ready to go to serve those who are in need immediately. And it may be very much a change in format, plan, priorities. But what I'm excited about here is that you all are already thinking about how can we up our game. And we're not the same movement that we were 50 years ago. It's a whole lot easier to build on something, particularly where you're already thinking about how do we need to change in order to have an impact here. So, but when it happens, it could happen quickly.
So will it happen immediate that the PA Control Act legislation immediately goes away also?
Well, it's hard to tell what the court will end up doing. So what the court was asked specifically to do was to find a right to abortion in Pennsylvania's Constitution so that they could strike down the Medicaid prohibition on abortion funding. So there's one thing they're asking for. But in finding a constitutional right, they can throw a bunch of other things in that opinion to be suggesting that the rest of the Abortion Control Act is in jeopardy. Then we're off to the races with a new lawsuit, or they may say a whole bunch in this particular lawsuit. And I don't know. And it depends on how aggressive the court opinion would be. So if in their mind, they're just kind of, if they're filling a hole, if they feel like, okay, Roe versus Wade went away, and so we need to fix this, and we're just basically going to put Roe back into place in Pennsylvania, then we maintain the really, really bad status quo. Nothing gets necessarily struck down. But this court always worries me that they're going to go much, much further than that. And the logic of what the abortion industry is asking for could go much further. I just don't know how soon and how much of existing law they're going to topple. So it could be all, it could be nothing. I think it's more likely. That they will find the right, and somewhere in between, where maybe there's the abortion funding piece and some other pieces that make it harder for pregnancy resource centers to operate. And I guess the other perspective that I want to place in here if the abortion industry gets what they want, what we've seen in other states, where when they get what they want, they're not satisfied with that either. So they could have abortion during all 9 months of pregnancy, and then guess what they go after next? They go after you, and we don't want that either. So there's like trying to keep this all at bay means we need to be fighting in court. We need to be fighting legislatively. We need to be fighting with constitutional amendment. But it's going to take all of us working together. And so I think when we hit the period where we're beginning to do events throughout the state, trying to get people understanding about the constitutional amendment effort, and you were asking Joe earlier, how can we work together? It's probably, let's work on some joint events in all of your areas throughout the state, so that people in your community can understand what kind of impact the court's decision, once that comes down, what kind of impact that has on life and why it's necessary to be able to fix that.
That's great. See, Sarah, he does want you on our side of the state.
Any other questions from anyone?
I see what Amy put in the chat, just to point out with the trigger policies, and certainly, yeah, there's many states that are doing those and have those in place, and should the decision stand as what Justice Alito has said, that case in Roe must be overturned. There's going to be much litigation. I was just on a call with Alliance Defending Freedom, one national allied group of attorneys, and just the amount that the abortion industry will be pushing back on those state laws. But also, yes, it puts into, some of the neighboring states that we have. As Sarah was mentioning, in Ohio, they might have some things very different than Pennsylvania. And I guess the one thing I draw with trigger something is called conditional policies. It would be very helpful to have elected officials in place that stand for life. And so it puts all the more importance on those that are in office. We have officials that are bragging about the desire to see abortion essentially unrestricted. I just saw the minority leader in the Senate was praising the vote, or really saying we needed to see it happen, that what we are saying was the Abortion Until Birth Act, the federal bill that Senator Casey decided to support. And I mean, it goes even beyond Roe. It eliminates parental consent laws. It takes away conscience protections. I mean, it's very much extreme, and yet that's what elected officials are trying to see happen. And so there is that need to make sure that elections go a way that would support life. And so just emphasizing that. I guess I'd put a plug as well. We have a website, pafamilyvoter.com. And it's our voters guide. We try to produce that every year, information from candidates. And so as we head into the primary next week, and then also with the general election in November, having resources available to encourage people, vote. Elections matter. They passed that Abortion Until Birth Act. It's going to impact pregnancy centers. It's going to impact your community. You're going to see more babies being killed, frankly. So just, yes, emphasizing the importance of upcoming elections.
I just have a couple of thoughts. One, Debbie, is for you and your team, and then one, Randy, is for you guys at PFI. I wonder, Debbie, if you're set up with PLE so that on the website, if they're being vandalized, that they would, alert you guys, and that it could be kept track of across the state, and even prayer-wise, that it seems to me it would be good if the website would be a communication link that would, both disseminate news that's happening and also prayer and support for each other. And maybe that's happening to an extent, but I just think, for such a time as this, there's an opportunity for unprecedented unity, which, of course, we've all been praying for years. And I think that would be what, the Father would want for us and for Pennsylvania and the people and the families and the babies. And for PFI, I was thinking, Randy, as you were talking about the event that you're coming to speak at for us, I wonder if you guys did a brief video that was 2, 3, 5 minutes and made it available to PRCs. I would think like at our fundraising dinner that we would want to work that in. And it would be, just a nutshell on whatever the current status is, and maybe you'd have to make one every month. I just think that would be extremely valuable. And as that thought came into my mind, I wonder if PRCs are in a unique position because churches are supportive of PRCs, but churches aren't necessarily talking about the abortion issue behind the pulpit, except perhaps for Sanctity of Human Life Sunday. And so I wonder if PRCs can kind of be a bridge for churches to see that it is a political issue, but that's because it's a biblical spiritual issue. Mm-hmm. If there can be kind of an ingathering of our supporters as well as our supporting pastors as they would become more educated. And as God kind of would take maybe the blinders off and have us all see it in the way that he sees it, and not just to quarantine it off as a political issue.
Lots of good points there. Yes, we need more ambassadors to our churches, because I think a lot of pastors miss the fact that issues are biblical issues because they have become political issues. They're still biblical issues. Talking about life is a biblical issue. Some pastors do that well. If you can be a bridge, that would be great, and we can help. We can help with resources. We can even we can help you in creating resources. We can create resources ourselves. So even as you were talking about videos that could be shown at an event, I'm glad that we have both members of our communication team on here, Dan, and I see Lexi Sneller's on here as well, because that's certainly something that we could put together to be helpful. And in fact, if you're ever in a setting where you need a Spanish language speaker or a Spanish video with somebody new on our staff, that's something that we would be able to pull off as well.
I appreciate, I'll just add, certainly we appreciate any time that there's opportunities that maybe you guys could make use of to talk about whether it's a life amendment or others that we can be a part of and help. I mean, certainly let us know. And on this issue, I could point to two. Currently right now, there's a website, afterroe.com, talks about really what the status of law would be if Roe is overturned. And so there's a page for Pennsylvania. There's a quick video of Randy Michael talking in brief of what would take place. We're also looking to create a video that just kind of talks about the Life Amendment in a way that can be shared. Essentially, we need to have the law passed this session by the end of June. So there's going to be a push the next month and a half to really make sure that happens. So we're creating some of those resources just as we speak even. So there's some things we can share. And then on top of that, if there's some things that, we can do directly for you, I'm always all ears and seeing what capacity we can make to try to make some of those things happen.
Yeah, I'll just add, Lisa, I like what you shared. We'll need to look into that as far as the website. Currently, just to remind those that may not be aware, we do have a Facebook page that's private. It's a group. And so that was always intended for communication and for support of one another. And that's Pennsylvania Life Exchange ED group. And so if you go on there, you'll need to ask to be accepted as a member. And once you're accepted, we just verify that you're actually a pregnancy center in Pennsylvania and you are who you are. Then from there, we can also be supporting one another and praying for one another. But definitely check it out in the link, because I'm aware there are some directors that are not on Facebook. So. Any more questions or comments?
Well, I don't know. I guess I'd open it up, Debbie or Matt, any final closing. I think, again, I just want to be encouraging all of you. It's a joy to be with you and a joy to talk with those that as I put, on the front lines of this. You're seeing so many women that are considering this. And now with this Roe decision and everything in the news now, it just heightens that. And just, it's a tremendous opportunity. And it's something that I know our staff at PA Family will be keeping you in prayer. Just the opportunities that are presented these next few weeks, months. And so we certainly want to be a resource to you. So yes, we'll follow up, Debbie, sending out those resources. I want to help be a resource for everyone.